Well, hello there. Welcome along to EFL Debate, the League One podcast. Hope your Wednesday's gone very, very well. We're talking about teams embroiled in the dogfight tonight. Who's going to get out of it and who, unfortunately, will suffer the drop into the fourth tier. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host for the night by Jake Tonge from Channel 72. Jake, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Just before we bring in our first guest in a few minutes, I just want to sort of get a bit of a big picture view. We've kind of deliberately have taken Fleetwood out of this equation because while they still do have a realistic chance of staying up, I feel very, very close to writing them off. It's an 11-point gap, and it feels like they're selling players, first-team players this January, rather than necessarily or more than strengthening their squad. So it looks a precarious situation for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, Fleetwood, especially being as close to Nappers as I am, it's quite terrifying for them. Obviously, the news of Josh Earl going to Barnsley, Jack Marriott is rumouredly leaving the football club. I think, look, they're not, I said on that League One pod a couple of weeks ago that they were in games, and I referred to that after the Stevenage game that they had 30-odd shots on goal that day. And to be honest, I think they have been in a lot of games. They've just been unfortunate. I just think it's that when it's that real moment where they need to have that bit of quality, they just lack it at times, whether that's a pass. I watched the Derby game on Sky, Gab, at the start of the month, and they had a couple of really good opportunities. They got into a couple of areas. Josh Vella, who's since gone to Carlisle, just if he'd been a little bit better with his pass, they could have had a much better opportunity at scoring. And then going the other way, they just switch off set pieces in open play. You just really worry. The only good thing that I'm liking about Fleetwood at the minute, Gab, and it is the only thing, is that they're trying to look after themselves for next season. So you look at Brendan Wiredu and Junior Katerna, both signing new deals. You would assume, now obviously we don't know, that they would have relegation release clauses in so that if their Fleetwood were to get relegated, which they probably will, then they're going to at least be looked after financially. And going into a League Two season, that might give them that spur to kick them on and hopefully come back. But yeah, for me, Gab, like you, Fleetwood just it's a real sad story for Fleetwood. But yeah, it looks like their time in League One is going to a close.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's partly a psychological thing, with what's proven to be true about their former owner Andy Pilley, and I think there's no getting away from it. Like he has been a legendary figure for Fleetwood Town, and he's the reason they've had their success. And I think when you have someone like that who is adored by so many people at Fleetwood to have been proven to be, morally in the wrong, I think that actually has a knock on a club's sense of purpose and drive. And I think that's sometimes that's difficult to quantify, and you don't know exactly how that affects teams, but I think it does, and I think that's what we've seen this season. Before I bring in Jon Palmer from Cheltenham Town, I just wanted to ask you, Jake, how far up should we look in terms of the League One dogfight? Because I still think there's reason to have some worries about Cambridge, although they've definitely looked solid under Neil Harris. Burton, I think I'm worried about. Shrewsbury have certainly improved under Paul Hurst, and Exeter found some really good form as well. I'd probably suggest Wigan aren't going to get sucked in, and I certainly don't think your lot Lincoln will either.
Yeah, well, I hope not. The ones that I'm looking at really are Exeter down, which makes it really interesting actually, because there's more to that. You look down the league in the last couple of years, Gab. I think there was, I don't know if it was 21-22 or 22-23. There was really, it was 4 teams out of 6 or 7, and this year it's from an outside point of view, it's a lot more entertaining with more teams involved. But I think you have to look from Exeter down. I know they are very well, they're 2 points behind what we are.
Yeah.
But my worry with Exeter is, although they've tried to rectify it in the window, they've signed Mo Issa, which is a really good bit of business, by the way. All of those teams down. The one that I'm worried about the most, really, of those teams currently outside the bottom 4, if you're asking me, it's Wycombe at the minute. They're not. I know they scored the 2 goals to come back from 2-0 against Fleetwood, but just the performances and the fact that they've got a habit of conceding late as well always gives the opportunity, the opponent an opportunity. So for me, it's Exeter down for me, but Wycombe are one that I'm extremely worried about.
I can see why there's some concern about Wickham, but I personally still feel they've got enough quality in their squad to stay up. They've not had the season that they're hoping for, that's for sure. And they travel on Saturday to Cheltenham Town, where we're joined by Jon Palmer from the Gloucestershire Echo. Jon, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us. A couple of performances from Cheltenham against top sides in the league in Bolton and Derby. A bit disappointing not to have taken anything from those performances, because the results do leave you 7 points adrift again, which must be so frustrating. But at the same time, you must take a lot of heart from the courage and what the players served up as well.
Yeah, hi Gab, hi Jake. It's definitely been a difficult few games for Cheltenham, because they feel a sense of injustice that decisions have gone against them in those 2 games against the big boys. Darrell Clarke certainly feels that they're not getting the decisions at the moment. So George Lloyd had a goal ruled out against Bolton for offside, but he definitely wasn't offside. And I think the club have given an apology about that one. And then against Derby, 1-0 up through Circum, and George Lloyd gets hacked down in the box and nothing given. And I think it's been another case of the referee's basically held his hand up and said he's made a mistake. But the club don't need apologies from officials. They need points on the board. And like you said, suddenly it's looking a bit daunting again now. I was just listening to what Jake was saying about the table. I agree Exeter's down, but I think Shrewsbury will be all right. I'm thinking Cambridge down are the ones that still got something to worry about. But that's, there's almost a 10-point gap to those teams up there that have gone into the 30s now. And Cheltenham are stranded on 23, should be a lot more. And you can't deny that they look a good side now under Clarke, but I'm just slightly worried now with 19 games left. They're going to run out of time. But I think the run of fixtures in February will decide whether they're still going to be in the fight right through to the end of the season or not.
Yeah, and obviously, John, the window's been pretty positive from a Cheltenham point of view. I think extending Tom Pett's contract was massive. He's been a revolution since coming in. I can tell you all about Tom Pett from his time at Lincoln. Thought it was brilliant. Kinsella adds a bit of depth into that midfield, and Andy Smith, I think, is someone that Lincoln were looking at in the summer window. Do you think that Cheltenham will spend that money that they got from Will Goodwin to go and try and bring in a centre forward? Obviously, reportedly got a 400k fee. Is that fee likely to all go on a centre forward, or is there a couple more that Darrell Clarke will look to bring in?
He's openly said, Jake, that he wants a left winger as well. But I think there'll be, before the end of tomorrow, I think there'll be probably 2 strikers in an ideal world for Cheltenham. One of them, obviously, as reported, they're trying to get Matty Taylor in from Forest Green. And now Forest Green have completed the signing of Christian Deutsch about 10 minutes ago, or announced it 10 minutes ago. I think that Matty Taylor one will go through. So that'll be one. And there's a bit of a theme there. Like you said, Pett, Kinsella and Taylor have all played under Clarke before. He definitely likes to get his trusted, players that he knows what they can do. He thinks he can get the best out of them. But I think it's been a pretty good month so far. The main blow from last week was Rob Street getting injured in the first half against Derby. And I think he's going to be out possibly for most of the rest of the season, if not the rest of the season. So he's looked a really good player. He's only got a couple of league goals, but he's been good. So that's another blow. So there's a lot going against them. And they've had Adam Murray going, a bit of a shock, going to take over at Eastbourne Borough. That's been replaced by Ian Barraclough. That's a really good appointment as assistant manager. But I think they've got to get tomorrow right. With the Goodwin money, I think Clarke okayed the deal, thought it was a decent deal for Cheltenham, thought it was a good opportunity for Goodwin, of course, but he would have been thinking Cheltenham first. And I don't think he would have sanctioned that if he didn't get assurances he was going to get a good chunk of it to spend to try and keep him up, because he came in knowing exactly what he had to do. Nobody really expected him to be able to do it, but he's shown the board that he could do it. It's not impossible now. Still in with the fight. So I think they will back him, deservedly so. I mean, if Cheltenham were on 1 point still, I don't think they'd be spending, which they were when he came in. I don't think they'd be spending any of the Goodwin money, but just building for next season. But I think they will, they will get 2 or 3 in tomorrow, I think, before the deadline. And there could be a few surprises along the way, I think.
Absolutely. I suppose in terms of the profile of striker, John, my feeling on it is that you could do with someone who replicates the physicality and the work ethic that Will Goodwin brought, because that seemed to be so crucial to the pressing game. At the same time, there's been noises that Darryl Clark seems to like a bit of experience in this team as well. So what route do you think he'll go down? And is there a possibility that you bring in one experienced striker and another one who's a younger, fit sort of grafter that can really run the channels?
Yeah, it's interesting because he's compared Taylor to Aidan Keener in previous interviews. He said, I worked with a lad at a previous club, referring to Taylor, and Keener reminds him of Taylor. He said that a few weeks ago. Obviously, Keener hasn't scored this season yet, but he's still there in the squad trying to do his best. But I think Taylor will come in and sort of hopefully take some of the chances that are being created. He's obviously got a great goal scoring record throughout his career. I think you're right. I think if there's going to be another one coming in before 11 o'clock tomorrow, it will be somebody with a bit of physicality, somebody with a bit of presence. Lloyd has got that strength and that spring, but obviously he's not what you call a target man, is he? So with Goodwin going, I think there is a lack of height, and with Street being injured as well because he's a decent size, I think that I'll be very surprised if the other one isn't 6 foot plus. Whether he's old or young, I'm not sure. I don't think Darryl sees much value in bringing in a load of young loanees, but I think I agree with Jake. Smith looked really good in his debut on Saturday, Andy Smith. So hopefully that's a good one to replace Owen Bevan. But I think they could probably bring in one more really good, talented young loanee, and that would be fine. Obviously, you just don't want a team full of them, which they had far too many of them when Darryl Clark first came in. So I don't think he'd be totally against that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets somebody who's been around the block a little bit either.
Is the Matty Taylor signing officially confirmed now, or is that likely to be confirmed? Or
no, it's not confirmed. It just depends whether you trust. It depends whether you trust me or not. But I think it's going to happen. I think it's likely to happen. I think it suits everybody. Forest Green have brought Doige in. Taylor hasn't played much football this year. He's had a couple of injury problems. Scored a couple of goals, but I think he probably needs a fresh start. Clark knows him, rates him, so hopefully it'll suit everybody. And I think that it's not confirmed yet, but I'm confident that Cheltenham will get that one done.
Hopefully they can get it over the line. I think Cheltenham, you must be quite relieved now after a couple of really tough games where you've played so well and just fallen short. You must feel like coming into the next few games, if you can repeat those performance levels, you've got a good chance, because you look at it, Wickham at home are out of form, Burton are sort of down there with you, so are Cambridge. So on paper, it's probably a more winnable fixture list coming up.
Yeah, there's not much room for error, though, is there? I think after the Boxing Day win over Shrewsbury, everyone was really positive. Everyone felt confident. Then letting the lead slip against Reading, which was a game Cheltenham probably should have won, having started the game so well and opened up a 2-goal lead, that was a bit of a blow. Although a draw against Reading isn't a terrible result on paper. Then the Northampton game was a bit flat on New Year's Day, going there and losing, and then the Pompey game gave everyone a big lift. And now these two games against Bolton and Derby, where they've played really well, should have got at least a point, if not 3 from those two games. It just feels like whatever happens against Wickham, they need to grind out a result. Doesn't really matter how they play. If they slip up in these next few games, I think they will be. The gap is just going to be too big. Darryl Clark wanted 15 wins, didn't he, when he first took over? He's got 6. So by that calculation, he needs 9 more from 19 games. That's a big ask, isn't it? You might throw a few draws in and knock one or two of the wins off, but 9 out of 19. The goals are still an issue. With Goodwin having gone, Circum's playing out of his skin. He's got 7 this season. But other than that, and with Street being injured, you've got Lloyd who's got 2. Both came in the same game. You've got Long that's got 2. Both came in the same game. That's it. No other goals scored by Cheltenham Town player this season. That shows you how tough it's going to be to get out of trouble.
It certainly does. I mean, Jake, I want to come to you on this, because as much as we've given Cheltenham a lot of praise for their resurgence under Darryl Clark and how well they've done to claw it back, I guess this position that they're in kind of shows how damaging it is to have the start that they had, where it was, I think it was 1 point from their first 11. You've got Port Vale, who they're 7 points off, but Vale have got a game in hand and have been able to add some really high quality loans to their squad. Wickham, I know you said you're worried about them, but they're 8 points better off than Cheltenham, albeit having played a game more. You've got Charlton, who are again 8 points off, having played 2 games more, but they've got a quality squad. And by the time you get to Burton, the gap's sort of 9 points. Again, Cheltenham have got 2 games in hand. But while it's not an irretrievable gap to any of those sides, it is quite sizable, and I suppose that shows, Jake, how much work they've left themselves.
Yeah, and you refer back to the first however many games it was under Wade Elliott and then under interim charge. I think we sort of caught Cheltenham at the right time for Lincoln. We played them right at the back end of that, just before. I think Darrell Clarke was maybe actually in the stands at Central Bank when we beat them 2-0. And to be honest, I thought that day, they absolutely allowed us to go 2-0 up pretty comfortably. But after that, I thought that they made a couple of changes. Certainly, some came in the first half, and they matched us up, and I thought they were pretty good. But it just shows you that Cheltenham have been probably one of the best sides in the bottom half, since Darrell Clarke's come in, and they've still got them an awful lot of work to do in terms of staying up. Whilst it does tell you how good Darrell Clarke has done, absolutely, to claw back the distance and to get this team scoring and big results against the likes of Oxford and Pompey, and should have got something away at Bolton and Derby. I think whilst that deserves a lot of credit, you also have to, I suppose, not bash, but analyse the first sort of 10 games or so where things were really, really bad and it really wasn't going their way. My view is that I think Cheltenham will just about do it. I think we've got Cheltenham penultimate game of the season. It'll be final home game for them. I don't want to say we'll let them win to let them secure promotion, because we like going at Cheltenham, but they've got every chance, and if they can keep performing at the levels that they have been under Darrell Clarke, adding in obviously a couple more like John said, I think they're going to give themselves every chance. But it's easy at the end of the season, Gab, to go, well, if we just didn't do this, if we just done that. Football's not played like that, unfortunately. But I think appointing Darrell Clarke was the best possible thing that they could have done, and bringing in the players that he's done and what he's done so far for them has been nothing short of outstanding. And if he does keep them up, I think he's definitely a shout for manager of the season. I can't see anyone that's doing much of a better job. But it's really difficult. I can see them doing it just about.
John, if I look at the first 11, I think you can see 3 workman-like midfielders who are decent on the ball, and 2 industrious strikers, although Rob Street's now injured. So as we've talked about, there's going to be another one coming in. But what I think's maybe missing a little bit is someone who can create something out of nothing and work their magic between the lines. And with that in mind, I'm wondering what we've seen from Josh Harrop in the first 2 substitute appearances, because this is someone with high profile. He scored in the Premier League for Manchester United, hasn't had things all his own way in recent years through injury, and hasn't played much the last couple of years. Are you hopeful that he can find sharpness and be that something different that maybe Cheltenham need?
Yeah, you're right, Gab. I think he's the one they'll look to for the creativity or the goal threat if Sercombe is rested or if Sercombe comes off. That's the position that Harrop will probably play. But I think it's a good signing, because Cheltenham can't just go to the back of the queue with every other club to sign every well-known, proven player. They're not going to get anywhere near it. So taking a punt on somebody that's been out for a while, didn't have a club. Pet didn't have a club in the summer, which, as Jake said, it's unbelievable that he started the season without a club. I think he was being a bit picky, maybe. But in the end, he got the move to Cheltenham, and he's been brilliant since. So giving Harrop a chance, they had a look at him for a couple of weeks in training. So it wasn't just a total gamble. And I'm sure Clarke would have been looking carefully at how sharp he looked, how much he's looked after himself since the end of last season and the injury problems that he's been through. But ability-wise, definitely it looks quite exciting. There's been flashes. He had a penalty shout in one of the games where he had a shot blocked in the box. I think it probably would have been a bit harsh to give it, because the defender sort of didn't put his arm up, just hit it on the way through. But he looks like he can provide a spark. And the midfield's actually the area that Clarke's probably shaped the most so far, because he's brought in Kinsella, Harrop and Pett. Whereas you look for the rest of the team, and it hasn't really changed that much. He's just got more out of them. He's got 22 points from 17 games, I think, which is, considering what he walked into. His first game against Fleetwood, he'd only had 1 training session, I think, before that. Although he did watch the Lincoln game at the weekend, as Jake said. Come into the Fleetwood game, lose 2-0. Players got booed off. Since then, they've only gone back-to-back wins once this season, which was Carlisle just before Christmas and then Shrewsbury Boxing Day. So that's something they're going to have to do multiple times if they're going to stay up, I think. And that could happen when you look at the forthcoming fixtures. That could happen. But I worry when you play well and don't get anything, even if it is against Bolton and Derby, because they were games that Cheltenham will come away thinking, how did we not you could see it as a positive because obviously they're two
Yeah.
fancied teams to get promoted, and they always should be in this division. But it was still, I came away feeling it was a missed opportunity in both those games, albeit the refereeing decisions weren't in Cheltenham's favour on the day.
Yeah, sometimes those things can go against you, and they can really make a difference to the season. But hopefully, if there's if they can build on those performances, they can still give themselves a sniff. I wanted to ask you, John, about Darrell Clark's a manager who likes to keep opponents guessing, and it seems like so far this season he's tended to use a pretty relatively speaking, the same template, although there has been games where he's made substitutions early on and 4 subs at halftime at Blackpool and all the rest of it. But when he was at Port Vale, he sometimes liked to go from 3-5-2 to 3-4-3. And I'm just wondering, is there a world where you bring in the likes of Harrop and possibly Butler or Odedeji to maybe facilitate a change in formation to keep opponents guessing, like Clark has seemed to like throughout his career?
Yeah, absolutely right. Every game so far, he started with a back three. But I would say in some games, Circum has basically been playing up front. He's basically been almost up with the front two. It's almost been 3-4-3. We could call it 3-4-1-2. He's definitely nowhere near the two other midfielders anyway. So he has changed it around. I mean, there's been games where he's basically finished with 3-2-5. He chucks the kitchen sink at teams. He's not hanging around. He goes for it. Doesn't matter who they're playing. He'll go for the win. He'll risk conceding one on the break to try and get a point or to try and get a win. He knows there's no point in playing for 0-0s or trying to hold out for draws home or away. I think it's been quite exciting in that respect because he's just going for it. You mentioned the 4 substitutes at Blackpool. He won't just be passive and stand there and let the game unfold. He's always looking to change things, whether it's in the 5th minute or the 95th minute. He will chuck things at teams and he will try things. And the reason why I want a left-sided sort of attacking wide player is because he's got Ferry, who's done well. He's got Ben Williams, who's a solid, more defensive-minded, but obviously can get forward a little bit. But I think he wants an out-and-out left-footed. There's a lot of right-footers in the team, especially the attacking players. There's not much balance in there, so I can see why he wants another left-footer as an attacking option. And that's purely to when he as he put it, if he wants to flip it late in the game, he can put 3 up front and have a genuine left forward, rather than somebody like Lloyd or Street, who's now injured, of course, cutting in. So that could give the squad a little bit of more balance. Butler Odedeji has shown a few glimpses, but his game times were very limited, and I don't think Cheltenham want to rely on him too much. Although I'm sure he's got a good chance of having a good career. Again, I just don't think he's what Cheltenham need at the moment. Certainly from starter games, maybe as an impact sub, but I can't see him getting many starts. I think Harrop will probably be ahead of him and in a more attacking role, and Circum's got 7 goals. So, but there's no left footers really there. Ferry can play in a front three, and I think he's done well there in patches. But he's best used, of course, as a left wing back, and then Williams is their option. But you never know what he's going to do next. He's very unpredictable in an exciting, good way, and it has been good to watch. You ask any Cheltenham fan, they'll be delighted with what they've seen since he came in. Incredible transformation, but it's still going to be incredible achievement if he keeps Cheltenham up. There's still a lot of work to be done. And I think tomorrow will be interesting to see what they can do to finalise the squad. And then it's just, they know exactly what they need to do, and they'll be gung-ho, and I'm sure it will be entertaining.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case. Do you think they're going to do it just finally?
After Derby, I'm driving home thinking, another blow, another decision gone against Cheltenham. But I think Wickham, it doesn't take a genius to work out it's a huge game on Saturday, does it? With the where they are in the league, but even for Cheltenham to catch them is going to be some going. So I think got to get something against Wickham. I think I'm not going to say yes or no at the moment, but I think by the end of February we'll know whether Cheltenham can take it to the end of the season or not. I don't want to be a doom and gloom and say they're going down, but I still think, I totally agree, if Darrell Clark pulls it off, he has got to be up there as manager of the season in any division because of the situation he walked into. And I wouldn't put it past him, but the next few games with Cambridge, with Port Vale, with Wickham coming up, with Burton away next Tuesday, we'll know a lot more at the end of February.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be thrilling sort of February and beyond. So really can't wait to see what happens, and hopefully Cheltenham can pull it off. John, thanks so much for joining us and bringing us your insight, and hopefully catch up with you later in the season.
Yeah. Cheers, Gab. Cheers, Jake. See you soon.
Top man, John. So delighted to bring in my next guest, which is Lee Rooney from the Brunton Bugle podcast on Carlisle United. Now, Lee, in our opening graphics, we did include Carlisle United as one of the teams having a chance of pulling out of trouble in a way that we didn't with Fleetwood, although on paper you're actually in a very similar situation. And the reason for that is, while we've discussed at the top of the show that Fleetwood are selling some of their better players and seem to be half resigned to it and cashing in quite a bit, Carlisle have gone for a big recruitment drive this January. Encouraging performance, I think, at Barnsley. Obviously, well beaten by Bolton. Do you feel like you've got a sniff still of staying up?
Sniff is probably about as much as I'd say at the moment. It's a tough one because I look at the league table and it's so tight in that bottom half. Like it's just, I mean, arguably you can go up as high as Bristol Rovers and say they're the teams that are still probably in a little bit of trouble. You know, potentially that you could go that high. I know they got a good result last time out, but I mean, for us to catch someone like them is obviously going to be unlikely. We're looking at that sort of pack just above the relegation zone. Our biggest problem is, and it remains a problem, it has been all season, is we can't string two good performances together. And, you know, we played really well against Barnsley, and ironically, we probably could have done with the Cheltenham game to be on at that weekend that was called off because of the frozen weather. That would have been a much better opportunity for us to probably get a result of some kind. As it is, Bolton were excellent. You know, Josh Sheehan looks like one of the best midfielders in the division. He was fantastic. Yeah. And yeah, we had a little bit of rally in that game, though. We still had a bit of a go with them, but they kind of sat back a little bit and we kind of took advantage of that. So it's a really tough one to judge at the moment. I mean, you mentioned the recruitment drive, but obviously one's left today and it looks like another's going to be announced tomorrow. So there's a little bit of change there. But I think the main thing we want as Carlisle fans is just to see a bit of momentum going into the end of the season at the very least. And then if we do go down, we can potentially get ourselves straight back up. And, you know, I almost look at Northampton as an example. They went straight back down after promotion. And yeah, it took them 2 seasons and they were very unlucky in terms of what happened at Bristol Rovers that day with the 7-0 win against Scunthorpe.
Yeah.
But I look at them as a prime example. Don't, you know, throw the baby out the bathwater. Be sensible, build a decent squad and have a really good go into that season. So I really do hope we stay up because it is much easier once you're up there to be up there. But I might be unique amongst Carlisle fans. I don't think I think there's quite a balanced view in a lot of our fan base of if we go down these days, it's not the end of the world. Under the last ownership, yeah, it would have been probably, it's going to take us a long while to get back up. Under the new owners, we'd like to think we'd have a decent chance of coming back at the first attempt.
You've mentioned, you've alluded to Owen Moxon going there, Lee. Looks set to go to Portsmouth tomorrow. Well, it looks like anyway. How big of a loss is that going to be? Because I can remember when we played you at Sincil Bank, and I thought he was really impressive that day. I think he took the free kick for Luke Plans to nod in. You know, how big of a loss is Owen Moxon going to be? Because he probably has been one of your best players so far this year, really integral in the middle of the park. And also, what can Pompey fans maybe expect of him when he goes there tomorrow?
So, yeah, in a way, it is a big loss. You know, the stats do show he's probably been one of our better performers this season, but he's not been as influential as he was last season in terms of being the main man, the one who's driven everything. He's not been quite at the same level, and there's many reasons for that. One, it's been a step up, and, you know, he's just completed his first full season as a full-time professional, and it's maybe taken a little bit out of him, taking a bit of time to find his feet at this level. The added knockback of Callum Guy getting his injury at the start of November meant that he's had to do a lot of the defensive work over the last 2 or 3 months. So you haven't really seen him performing in exactly the same way as he had been. I think most of our fans now accept Guy is absolutely integral to the way we play, and losing him, arguably, we probably could have got away with losing Moxon to that injury more than we could do with Callum Guy, because that's how big an impact Guy has on the team. How big a loss he'll be? I think he will be a big loss, but at the same time, it's a common sense move by the club's owners. He wasn't going to sign a contract. We could have let his contract run down and kept him till the end of the season. There is a decent chance we're probably going to go down. And Portsmouth, by all accounts, have offered us a really, really good deal for a player who's out of contract in 6 months' time. And that money we could reinvest in signing a midfielder. It doesn't even have to be now, do it in the summer. Be sensible, use it then when the market's a lot better. And maybe trust the midfielders we've got to do it. It's not quite strong now, but, you know, we signed Josh Vella from Fleetwood, who hopefully will add a bit of steel in there as well. And Harrison Neal's looked good so far. If we can keep Taylor Charles fit, I can think he can make an impact. I think Jordan Gibson can do a role in that midfield three when we play a 3-5-2. It's just a case of it's going to be a bit of a salty end of the season without him, but there's a lot of our fans who'd argue things like his set pieces haven't been as strong this season, so that makes a difference. What can Pompey expect? He's a good box-to-box midfielder. I've seen some of their fans suggesting he can play it all across the midfield. That's not the case. He's okay as a sort of defensive midfielder, but he's at his strongest when he's getting up and down the pitch as that box-to-box player, picking up the ball on the half turn, playing in balls for attackers to run out. There's the best example of that one.
Actually, Lee, I'm kind of wondering, bit of a Portsmouth detour this, but I'm wondering how well his skill set will translate to more of a possession-based side, because as we've talked about on this podcast last season, his skill set seemed to be picking out those Hollywood passes that really cut teams open, which I think you could argue lends itself more to transitional sides rather than a team that's expected to dominate possession every week.
Yeah, but he's still quite a tidy player, and he quite often he would get the attack moving and give it to Gibson as well to run with. So it's not always a case of the Hollywood balls. I know that's what stands out because everyone thinks of the ball to Garner against Barrow for that goal, which is an unbelievable assist. And he's very capable of doing that. He's a big, strong, physical lad as well. You know, he'll put his foot in when he needs to. You know, he's over 6 foot tall. He wins his headers. His set pieces, when they're on the money, are brilliant. They haven't been on the money as much this season, unfortunately, which has been a bit frustrating. He's been taken off them for a while. They've looked a little bit better in recent weeks, and that might be, you know, with Huntington coming back into the team with that height in there, gives him more options to pick out, possibly. So, yeah, I think they're going to get a great player. I know some of our fans have taken this weird attitude to it and trying to make out like, oh, he's not actually that good. He's not made the step up. I think it's nonsense. That I think in a better team, you'll see a better player. You'll see somebody who'll step up, and there's a lot of talk, oh, he's not good enough for the Championship. Well, I still think he could have a good go at the Championship, and in a good team as well, with a bit of momentum behind him. I genuinely think he could do really well for Pompey.
Well, yeah, good luck to Owen Mox, and I'm sure most of us sort of echo that sentiment. In terms of the players that have come in to Carlisle United, Lee, are we talking about Harrison Neal as one of the ones who's stamped his mark straight away?
Yeah, stamp's very much the word. He likes a tackle. I mean, very impressed the way he flies into them. He's an interesting one because, bless him, he looks like he's towing a caravan sometimes when he runs. He's not the quickest player.
I've never heard that expression. Looks like
he does look like that sometimes. But, you know, he gets about the pitch, to be fair. He covers a lot of ground, and, you know, he's a willing presser as well of the ball. And he's actually played a bit further forward than I expected. I thought he would slot a bit more into the Callum Guy role, but actually he's been playing a bit further forward, and Moxon's been the one sitting deeper. So I don't know if that'll change now, or if Josh Vella will do that a bit more instead. But yeah, I've been really impressed with him and his attitude, and he keeps it very simple, keeps the ball well. He's been a really, really good signing so far.
Jack Diamond, Jack Diamond's one that I'm really excited about from a Carlisle point of view, because, you know, you look at the Carlisle first half of the season, and it would be fair to say that there hasn't been a lot of width and a lot of direct running in behind. Jack Diamond offers you, and you might not have seen him as much as I would have done last year, offers you a great amount of energy up front. I remember we went away to Derby, and after Ben House got sent off, he played the lone striker role superbly as we got a point at Pride Park. I think he's someone really to be excited about, Lee. He's got a knack for goal. You saw in the hat-trick that he got at Bristol Rovers away last year. Are you excited for Jack to come in and show you what he's got?
Yeah, it's going to take a little while to get him up to speed. I think he came on at half-time against Bolton probably earlier than Samo wanted to. And he did look rusty in those opening 10 or 15 minutes. He showed a few nice little touches there and a few little moments. And you thought, okay. I mean, to be fair, signing him at least stopped him scoring against us, because for Harrogate, I think he scored a couple, and he scored one for Sunderland in the trophy as well. So that stops that habit at the very least. But he's a player I've always really liked and always thought I wouldn't mind seeing him signing for us. Obviously, we all know what's happened off the field and stuff like that. The club have commented on that and covered it. But just purely looking from a playing viewpoint, yeah, I think he offers something that we've maybe been lacking in terms of width, as you say, and someone who can actually play down the middle as well a bit. Amari Patrick was perfect for that last season, and, you know, he obviously chose to leave. Good luck to him, but yeah, I think Diamond offers us something, and he's out of contract in the summer as well. So I think there's almost like a try before you buy option here and see how he does. And Yeah, I think he's a player that offers something we haven't really got, a direct runner. I know Gibson can do that, but Gibson does like to be on the ball a little bit more and come deeper for it and make things tick. Whereas I think Diamond is going to give us that direct bit of play. Absolutely.
Well, hopefully he can do that. Do you reckon Carlisle are going to stay up, Lee, or are you feeling like the likelihood is League Two next season?
I think we need basically to get probably 2 wins in the next 3 games to get ourselves in a position where we can start saying okay. Because I think, in fact, I'd maybe even argue getting like 7 points out of our next 4. So next 4 are Orient away, Portsmouth at home, ironically enough, and then Burton away, followed by Cambridge at home. And those 3 games, either side of the Portsmouth game, look vital to me. They're the ones I think, right, we've got to try and get points from those games, really. But if I was going to say go down or stay up, I'd say 60-40 in favour of going down at the moment, probably. And that's just being realistic.
Yeah, I think that's quite a favourable thing. I think a lot of Carlisle fans would say the likelihood of relegation is probably higher than 60.
I probably would, but I'm a bit of an optimist, so there you go. But no, it depends on how many of these players click. And look, it sounds like we're probably going to be signing another forward before the weekend. There's a few names flying about. I think Malik Wilkes from Sheffield Wednesday is one that's been mentioned as well, which will give us a bit more pace and width as well. So I don't know, but yeah, there's a few names flying, but I'm pretty sure we'll sign a striker tomorrow. If we've let Joe Garner go to Oldham, it suggests that we've got someone lined up to come into.
Well, hopefully they can give you a bit more reasons for optimism in the next few games. Lee, thanks so much for your insight, and look forward to hearing the Brunton Bugle podcast soon. And catch up with you later in the season.
Cheers.
Delighted to bring in our next guest, which is Neill Rees from the Tilehurst End, aka O'Bobbins. Neill, thanks so much for talking to us. How are you feeling about Reading's survival prospects at the moment?
I think probably, as the other guest there probably alluded to, it depends what happens in the next how long we got left 29 hours or so, really. And for us, it's just who's going to be outgoing. I don't think there's anything incoming, so which can be a good or it can be a bad thing, but I think on the surface of it, our chances are looking all right. Our trajectory is good. We've reduced the deficit from 10 plus points to 3. We've lost 1 in 9, scoring goals regularly, not conceding a ton of goals either. So yeah, generally it's looking all right. But it does depend on what the remaining outgoings are for the window to shut tomorrow.
Just on the pitch, then I've been really impressed. We played Reading just before Christmas. We drew 1-1 at Sincil Bank. I thought Reading were great that day with Harvey Nibbs and Sam Smith. What do you think sort of this recent run of form has been down to? Is it the players sort of unifying against the ownership, or is it the manager, or what's been this reason for the uptick?
It's a bit of both, I think. At the start of the season, we were using a system that didn't really work for anyone. Sellers was hell bent on using it, and it didn't work. It just didn't look as if the players were buying into it. So now we're playing a 4-1-4-1, 4-1-3-2 kind of hybrid. And the players fit the positions much better. And yeah, there's the other side that you're quite correct on, in that there's a lot of unity. There's a lot of doing things despite the ownership and everything that he represents. So, whenever, we see players giving us that 100% commitment that fans always want, we believe it, and we believe that that they're doing it to keep us in the division. So yeah, there are happy footballers in the sense that they're playing well, but as a club, I can't imagine many footballers that would be really happy working in that environment, to be honest.
Yeah, certainly a worrying time for the football club, and I think a lot of the ownership issues are well documented. So at this point, I'd just like to say, yeah, well done to Sell Before We Die campaign and some of the protests that have been going on, because that's taken a lot of courage. And I admire what Royals fans have done to stand up for a club that that they love. So yeah, good luck to you in your fight for fresh leadership at Reading. I want to ask you about one of the few experienced heads in, I suppose you could say, Andy Yardham, and probably Lewis Wing I would put in this category as well, and maybe Tom Holmes. Are these the players that you're going to be sort of looking to in terms of experience and guidance in what's otherwise pretty young side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all praying that we don't lose Harvey Nibbs, Smith, and Lewis Wing. If we lose those, and you can add Femi Aziz into that, definitely. If we lose any of those four tomorrow, then our chances diminish massively. And yeah, we are relying on experienced heads. Andy Edam's just come back from injury, so he's sort of been nursed back into fitness. He's often substituted in the second half. Yeah, Lewis Wing, he's central to almost everything that we do creatively in the middle of the park. We've played Charlie Savage alongside him recently to give us another kind of outlet as well. So yeah, that there are our key players, and most of them, as you say, are experienced heads that should know what to do. And they've experienced that in higher levels than where we are now. So you'd like to think that they put us in good stead.
Yeah, I think, Gab, the names that you mentioned there, Smith, Nibbs, Wing, Yeardham, you throw Savage and maybe Aziz into that as well. They were the reason quite a couple of people sort of went a bit more confident on Reading than what maybe they should have been with the ownership.
Yeah.
I think if they had to lose those, three of those, specifically Nibbs and Smith and Wing, I think you're almost putting Reading in League Two for next season. Is that?
Yeah.
Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, generally speaking, we've got two strikers in Smith and Iabachman, and they're both vastly different types of strikers. Smith will come and collect the ball from deep, and shield and do an awful lot of running, whereas Kelvin's really tall, gangly, and athletic. And he's a good finisher. But if you're going to adapt to a system when one isn't there anymore, it's hard to then to flip to another where Kelvin's so inexperienced as well. So, yeah, you've got that, and we've got no like-for-like replacements anywhere other than defensive areas. We got quite a few coverage in defence. We can interchange central defenders, even though we've lost a few this week. We can do that, but we can't replace Aziz with another winger. We haven't got another 10 in Harvey Nibbs. And as I say, we haven't got another striker. So, yeah, we're really, really stuck for options should they go. Luckily, Wing, Smith and Nibbs are on multi-year deals. So we're keeping the Wolves away from the door there. Aziz, his contract is up in the summer, so he could be, pickings for somebody. But obviously, we'd like to think that he would stay and at least see us out the last few months. And if he wants to go in the summer, then so be it. That's fine. But yeah, it's a nervy old time.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of some of the younger players, then Neill, you've got Tyler Bindon, who's earned some pretty kind reviews this season. You've also had Gerald Dorset coming in at left back recently, and Caelan Vickers has also earned some good reviews as well. Has it been? I suppose nice to see some young talent coming into this Reading side, and probably through necessity a little bit, but have some of them been able to thrive?
Yeah, definitely. The names that you've mentioned have all done really well. Dorset, for example, wasn't even in the picture at the start of the season. No one thought that he was going to get a spot at his favourite position at centre back. But because he's left-footed, we drafted him in at left back, and he's done really well. He's big, he's strong, so he can, he understands the rigors of what League One could offer. Took him a little while to adapt, but he's certainly proved himself to be, a mainstay there. Now, you wouldn't swap him out necessarily if we had another left back that could fill his shoes. We got other creative players that could play there, but they're too fragile and small. So, that they would need that building up first, whereas Dorset is naturally built like an outhouse, so he's absolutely fine. Tyler Binden, who's 19 now, coming from LA Galaxy's youth system, more by luck than anything else. His family moved over here for work reasons, and we managed to snap him up somehow. He's going to be a great pro in the future. I mean, he's very wise for his age now. Fans get on his back a little bit for his distribution and whatnot, but he's 19. What's he going to know about League One up front? Not an awful lot. So he's done really well. Caelan Vickers, I think fans want to see a bit more of him, but again, he's small and slight, so he's got to have a lot of adapting to do in close quarters. He's finding it tricky, so he's not getting an awful lot of game time as a result. But again, another one for the future if he can find a way to cope with the physical pressures of the game, then his feet will do the rest.
Well, yeah, hopefully that can continue. Do you think they're going to stay up then? If I had to ask you for a snap prediction now, Neil,
I'd say so. I think as long as we don't lose any more key players, I think we'll be fine. I think we've got a system now that's adaptable for when we're winning and when we're losing. Like at the weekend, we went down to a penalty against Orient and we equalised within 5 minutes. We haven't got a defeatist nature in us now. We don't kind of sulk about things and think, oh, that's it, we're done for. That doesn't happen often now. We don't show that weak side. We can get back into games. So yeah, I think if you're putting a gun to my head right now, I think we'll be okay. I think we'll get enough points. But yeah, come tomorrow night when anything can happen, as we know, then yeah, things could change.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam from Sell Before We Die says, excuse me, getting hiccups there. If we don't lose anyone else this window, we'll be fine. If we do, we'll be down by mid-match. So very much could still go either way. So yeah, a lot to be revealed. Neil, thanks so much for joining us. Hope you can find the resolution you're hoping for in terms of a change of ownership. And again, well done to the Sell Before We Die organisation and the work that you're doing there. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
No, been a pleasure as always. Cheers, Gab.
Yeah, top man, Neil. And be sure to check out the Tilehurst End website on all things Reading. Jake, I want to come to you then on, I suppose that, yeah, the League One dogfight. I think we can agree that Fleetwood are going to go down. Can we agree that, would you agree with me that Carlisle are likely to join them in League Two next season?
Difficult, Gab, because, Carlisle have a lot of reason for optimism with the fact that they've got a new ownership in. They've, they've brought in some. To be fair, they've brought in some good players. I think Jack Diamond's a good player. Luke Armstrong, obviously, he's done it at the level below, untested at this level. So they have taken a bit of a gamble. I would agree with you. It's difficult, especially because they've got this new ownership, Gab. That would be the one thing that they've had, at the start of the month that I said, yeah, absolutely, Carlisle have got this ownership and they'll go out and they'll spend mega money and they'll make sure that they can bring in players that are experienced at saving people or staying up in this league and have done it before. I don't think they've done that. I don't think that you look at the recruitment that they've made. It doesn't scream, we're desperately trying to stay up here. It screams like, oh, well, we're sort of mid-table. We can experiment a little bit. We're bringing in a couple of lads that aren't proven. There's, Jack Diamond, who's not played football for 6 months, etc. They're sort of taking it a bit too leisurely for my liking. It's like they're...
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think they've picked up some really good League Two players, like Luke Armstrong's been, one of the top goal scorers in the league if you accumulate his goals over, a 3-year period. Harrison Neill had a really good season last year in League Two with Barrow. And I don't think they're necessarily going to get proven League One players, because proven League One players aren't going to go to a team in Carlisle's position in League One. So I think that the Piatak's investment has definitely strengthened them. At the same time, I just look at the points gap, and 10 points does look a bit of a jump, even with a really good January window. So I think we can agree on that. So if we say Carlisle and Fleetwood are going to be playing League Two football next season, then I suppose that really opens up the conversation, because Cheltenham, there's so much belief about Cheltenham, and I almost want to say I've got more belief in Cheltenham staying up than Reading, just because of the mood around the club under Darrell Clarke and the way that he's galvanised the club for a relegation dogfight and some of their performances against top sides. Whereas I think Reading, because they're a club in divided off the field, I think it's difficult. I'm sure Reading fans are very supportive of the players, but in terms of the atmosphere and mood around the place, I think it'll be a bit different at Cheltenham. So I would say Cheltenham are the team from the bottom four that actually have the best chance of beating the drop, even if they're 4 points below Reading.
Yeah, I think you'd certainly want to be in Cheltenham's position. And even though they're 4 points back, but they've got a manager in who, since he's come in, there's been an effect. He's been able to come in. He's been a manager and not a head coach, which what Ruben Sellers is, who only has command on what goes on at the grass. And clearly, if you believe the rumours about the Tom McIntyre deal yesterday, almost had no idea that was going to take place. So he's not exactly, when you appoint a head coach or a manager, you want them to completely invest in it, and you want them to be able to make decisions for the club. And unfortunately, I think that's been taken out of Ruben Sellers' hands a little bit. When you look at it and you flip it back on Cheltenham, Darrell Clarke is running that football club from the manager's position. And often when you get things like that, or you've got managers who are, I think back to Danny Cowley when he first came into Lincoln. I think of Steve Evans. I think of that sort of type of manager. More often than not, Gab, they tend to get the outcome that they want. And Darrell Clarke has done it before at this level. We've seen it. He like I say, he's completely galvanised. He's brought in players that he wanted to bring in. Kinsella and Tom Pett, who I think has been brilliant, like we said earlier. I agree. I would rather be in Cheltenham's shoes, purely because of, like you say, the atmosphere at Reading. Whilst the players are unifying together against the ownership and stuff like that, clearly the behind the scenes is such a mess. And if we're going to say that Fleetwood behind the scenes is such a mess that they're going to go down, then surely you've got to be looking at Reading and going different, but also equally as chaotic as Fleetwood. So I'd agree with you there on Cheltenham and Reading.
It's a little bit of a jumble for me above the relegation zone. But if we're saying Cheltenham have a better chance of than Reading of staying up, then as we touched upon earlier in the podcast, they've got a 7-point jump to Reading, and they've got a game in hand. A 8-point jump to Wycombe Wanderers, and they've played a game more. An 8-point jump to Charlton, and they've played 2 games more. A 9-point jump to Burton, and they've played 2 games more. 9-point jump to Cambridge, and then a 10-point jump to Shrewsbury, and they've played 2 games more as well. So same with Exeter. So it feels like there's a lot of teams that could get sucked in, but they're all keeping the dogfight at arm's length. But I still have a little bit of a worry about Burton Albion, because although there has been a little bit of a response from them under Martin Patterson, they've not got the same sort of sample size as they had as Cheltenham have with Darrell Clarke, which makes me think Cheltenham might be able to sort of bridge the 9-point gap to Burton with those 2 games in hand.
Yeah, well, we play them on Saturday, Gab, so I'll be able to tell you a bit more about them. But I completely agree. To be fair, I was actually really impressed. I mean, I've only watched the Burton game when they were at Derby on Sky. I wasn't able to watch they won at home, didn't they? I can't remember.
Yeah, they beat Charlton, didn't they?
Charlton,
and they've signed Joe Hugill on loan, and the lad from Palace looks like a great signing as well.
Yeah, Hancock's massive on him, isn't he? He's always retweeting him and tweeting about him. But but Burton, it was difficult because I was impressed with them for about half an hour, and then for the rest of the game, I was really sort of disappointed with what they did. I think Hugill and this Ademola can certainly add goals to the team, and that's certainly what Burton needed. But if you're Cheltenham, you've got to think, you're looking at a list of teams, Gab, that aren't going to win every game between now and the end of the season. That these teams are where they are on the table because they're incredibly inconsistent. And I think Cheltenham, whilst also being fairly inconsistent at times, have shown a more sort of flat path than these other teams that are very high and very low. So I think they'll be looking at that and going, we're pretty consistent. We think that by being consistent for the next 19 games, we feel that we're giving ourselves the best possible chance to catch these teams that can be so up and so down. Even if they go to, I don't know, let's say one of them goes to Bolton and wins, or goes to Portsmouth and wins, we know that that's the peak, and they'll get a lot worse, and performances won't be up there all the time because that's where they are after 30 odd games. So for me, Burton, like I told you, Wickham are one that I'm worried about. I know you're very big on some of the lone players that they've got at Wickham. Freddie Potts, I think they've got some players. Dale Taylor is a great player. My thing with Wickham, Gab, and I spoke to Phil Catchpole about this when we played them at the start of the month. It's just the late goals, Gab. It's a habit. You look at the one against us. I know they scored a late goal on Saturday against Fleetwood, but they've conceded. I think I watched the post match of Matt Bloomfield after we had played them, and he said these goals that we're conceding so late are costing us. And it's a habit. When teams get into habits of things, Gab, it tends to keep happening. And if they're going down there, the opposition are always going to know they've got a chance against Wickham.
I see where you're coming from, and I agree that the season for Wickham hasn't gone exactly the way that they're hoping for, and I think it's been a season of stylistic transition. They were flying high, by the way, in October. Since then, they have had a lot of injuries. Matt Bloomfield's been in question a little bit as well. At the same time, I do think Wickham are a bit of a step above some of the teams towards the bottom, and I do think that will prove over the remainder of the season, because they've, in some of those games where they went on that winless run, I'm sure they outplayed Cambridge and came very close to winning. Absolutely robbed by Shrewsbury. Probably should have won that game. They ended up losing 1-0, and I think Lincoln they probably should have won as well. So there's 3 home games right there that I think they'll fit. Well, no, come on, don't look at me like that, Jake.
I think we should have beat Wickham. Yeah.
What?
I think we should have beat Wickham. Yeah.
On chances, you think you should have won at Wickham?
Yes. We had a goal disallowed for no reason.
Oh no, okay, but if you take away like an individual incident,
they didn't. Apart from
the chances Kieran Sadlier created in that game.
Nah. Rico Hackett made just as many when he came back. When Rico Hackett came on the pitch, there was only going to be one team that was going to score in that game for me. But we can argue about that till the cows come on. We're not in the relegation battle, Gab, so you can keep us out of it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you're going through the teams. Port Vale, obviously, I think we were going to speak to Bez, but I don't know where he is at the minute. But they're a team that I am worried about. They've had a couple of issues. Wickham, like I mentioned, Charlton. As good as Charlton are, Gab, and as good of a squad that Charlton have, they have to face facts that they are in this relegation battle. They probably have the highest ceiling of the teams that we're talking about at the moment because they've got a squad.
You know what, Jake? I was thinking of the Port Vale game, not the Lincoln game.
Yeah. Do you know what I was? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
That's completely. Oh God, there's so many teams to keep on top
Yeah,
of.
we should have. Yeah, no. I'll let you off, Gab.
Cut that if you're watching on the live show. Just ignore that.
Ignore the fact that Gab said Wickham should have beat us. But yeah, do you know what, Gab? I suppose we have to talk about them because we haven't spoken about them yet. Shrewsbury are actually someone, and I know there is a lot of recency bias in this, but I was really, really impressed with them at Northampton. Like, really impressed. You know, they registered 18 shots on goal, most they've made all season. XG was through the roof from a Shrewsbury point of view, which we haven't seen a lot under Matt Taylor. You know, they changed shape, went forward at the back. Jordan Shipley was an absolute menace down that left-hand side. They probably caught Cobblers on a good day, don't get me wrong, but I think if Shrewsbury can play like that more often than not this season, I think they'll be at 50 points. I think they'll get anywhere between sort of maybe 53 and 60 points. I think
do you know what? I'm glad you mentioned Jordan Shipley, because when Paul Hurst was Grimsby manager, he loved this midfielder they had called Harry Clifton. He's a really versatile midfielder, super hardworking, and can just do any job. And I feel like Jordan Shipley's a little bit like Harry Clifton in the way that he just doesn't moan, he'll just get on with it, and probably has a bit more high league pedigree as well.
Just swore at me there, Gab, saying the G word.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Can't be saying that G word around me, mate. It gets me all hyped. But
okay.
Yeah, no, I thought Shrewsbury were great, Gav, against Northampton. You know, Dan Udo was a great finish for the goal. And then the thing with Shrewsbury is, Gavin, they were a threat from set pieces before, but they've still got that threat of Shay Dunkley from corners. And, you know, Morgan Feeney, I think he played right back, but he's still pretty competent and combative in the air. So you'd imagine they'd be okay from defending set pieces. But yeah, I know I just wanted to make that point because we hadn't spoke about them so much, but they're certainly somebody. And also I listened to the it's under the Avistan podcast. I know you've had Jack on before. They did a pod with Neil Harris.
I love that. Yeah, he's
instantly
like that. Neil Harris, to be fair.
Yeah, instantly I just thought, well, that's Cambridge staying up, because I love listening to him. I thought he was brilliant. I think you know, the way he talks about football and the way he's doing things there. I think Cambridge will be fine. I think Shrewsbury will be fine. Exeter, yeah, the only good thing, the thing about Exeter, Gab, is they gave themselves such a good head start at the start of the season. With the run they went on. I think that
they gave themselves a great start, but I also feel like they created a bit of a rod for their own back a little bit, because it's like you say, we've dropped, rather than say we've assembled a nice healthy points tally early on, it's like we've gone from this position to and reality is that's kind of football. Like you're going to have ups and downs, and you know, you've kind of got to make some allowances, especially it's going to be such a difficult season. It was always likely to be an awkward season at times for Exeter. So I really admire how Gary Caldwell has carried them through, and that's been largely without the centre forward that he went into the window saying they absolutely really needed. They've now got that in Moisa, who I think definitely, if he can find some form, I think could really help them get over the line. I'm glad you mentioned Cambridge as well, because I think Neil Harris, ironically, I actually think Neil Harris is probably, although Mark Bonner was the sort of Cambridge United fan and had the connection with the club, I actually think Neil Harris is better at playing to the crowd because he's more outwardly emotional. Mark Bonner's main strength is staying calm and sort of keeping his composure, but he doesn't really show his emotion that much, even though he does have that connection to the club. Whereas Neil Harris is all about the fist pumps. And
and Harris obviously does have the connection to the city itself, doesn't he? Having been at Cambridge City, I think, when he was younger. So he's got that tie with the city. Maybe
good
not
knowledge, actually. I mean, I'm impressed.
Well, mate, I do my research coming on AFL debate, Gab, but he has that connection to the city as well. And I think, you know, when you've got that and you've got a manager who's so outly passionate, I would sort of say it's a similar style appointment to Danny going to Colchester, because you know, they've got that background in that area. They're very passionate people, and it strikes me as a very sort of similar appointment. Like I'm all my eggs are in the Colchester basket at the moment, Gab.
Totally, yeah.
I love them after you know, they're assembling like a little like a past and present Lincoln City team with Anderson and Danny and Nicky. I'm wondering when Alex
together, guys.
I'm wondering when Alex Woodyard's going to rock up.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan Power.
Lee Angol's going to turn up at Colchester, but I wanted to make that point about Neil Harris. I think he's been brilliant, and you know the caliber of manager that he is. Having what he's achieved in the game, nearly taking Cardiff up and doing consolidating Millwall at the championship level, and now you look at where Millwall have gone since, and you thought, well, that they're a really well-run club, and Neil Harris has done a big part of that. So I've got a lot of faith in Cambridge to stay up, and Lyle Taylor was a great addition also, I think.
I'm finding an absolute mind scrambler. Anyway, whatever it is, that's what it is. In terms of, because I'm a little bit worried about Charlton in the sense that there is a disconnect at the club, but they do have, similarly to Wycombe, they do have a lot of quality. So I'm kind of inclined to think they won't go down. But then if it's, Vale have done some good business in the loan market. Yeah, do you think Cheltenham? I've got a feeling Cheltenham could catch Port Vale, but again, 7 points, they'll have a game in hand. It's a big gap, isn't it?
I also think that Cheltenham still have Port Vale to play at home. I know they've played Vale Park, so obviously if you factor in if we're going to say Cheltenham are going to beat Port Vale at home, then that gap only goes to 4 points. If it stays the same, and that's all of a sudden you've 4 points behind a team. That's you can turn that around in the space of 7 days. So Port Vale are one that I'm worried about. Like I say, Wycombe and Charlton, I will agree with you a little bit about Wycombe in terms of them and Charlton have got the highest ceiling. Just on Charlton, they've just got such a cloud of uncertainty, Gab.
They do, yeah.
Them. And that worries me. It does, because the squad is fantastic on paper. May, Teo Eden, McGrandles and Connor Coventry, etc. Fiorini, naming ex-Lincoln boys again here. But it's just that the uncertainty around the head coach. And if it's a really good point, if they appoint Nathan Jones, then that would be a very good appointment. And I imagine that would then lift them up.
Absolutely. So if I was I'm going to give you a snap bottom four prediction. I knew
you were going to do this.
I know, yeah. We've got to do it. We'll get through it together, Jake. I would do it. Fleetwood, Carlisle. I think Cheltenham stay up. I think Reading go down. And I think the last team to go down will be Port Vale. There you go.
It's a good job Ben's didn't come on, or else he'd have a go at you.
I know, yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna stick with Fleetwood, Carlisle, and Reading. I think they will lose I think they will lose. It's been heavily rumoured that Sam Smith's going to go to Bristol Rovers if Collins is to disappear up at Bolton. So I think that would be a real killer, because Sam Smith is an integral part to the way that they play on the top end of the pitch. I thought it was brilliant when they came just before Christmas. So I'm going to go for them three. God, do I try and annoy Ed because he's not here and we play them on Saturday? No, I quite like Martin Patterson.
But you don't like Ed?
I don't know. I love Ed. That's great though. Gab, it's so difficult, isn't it?
I know, yeah, it's really hard.
It's like picking the best.
It's like you're making calls that you immediately know that you don't think it's. That's how hard it is.
Now you've gone Port Vale. I'm gonna stay away from Port Vale because you went for Port Vale. I'm gonna be rogue. I'm gonna say Exeter still, even though they're as high as 14th. I think it's a bit of a false position.
Well, that shows how tight it is. The fact that the last day of January we can be saying a team 14th is going to go down just shows how crazy and unpredictable the League One dogfights get. I think we've got no chance of getting it right just because of how chaotic it is. But it's been fun to have a go. So, Ed, Jake, had Ed in my head there.
Oh my God.
I've got head on my mind, mate.
Oh God, go and see a doctor, Gab, if you've got head on your mind.
Next up, when he's on next week, I'll be saying I was thinking of you the whole time. Right, Jake, thanks so much for joining us from Channel 72. Really appreciate your insight as always. Thanks to all our guests this evening. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate League One podcast. We'll see you again next week.